Hello to anyone watching. Sorry if you can hear my laptop in the background. It's a little bit noisy and my speaker system here isn't too great. But today I'm going to do something that is seeming like more and more work the more I think about it, and that's just go through and rank all of the original Pokemon cards. I really like playing with these Pokemon cards. You can still play with them today if you can't buy them just through the Game Boy game. You could even play the sequel that's got like the darker one. It's got a cool fan translation patch. But yeah, I'd like to go through and actually rank these cards. My rankings are going to look way different than someone else that would possibly rank these cards. And that's, I really don't want to deal with 4 Hitmonchan or 4 Electabuzz. I mean, these cards are, they're going to be an S tier, just as a spoiler real quick, because they are just insanely good. And you pair them up with like 4 energy removals and 4 super energy removals, and you're really not going to have a fun time because you don't have to think strategically, and the person that you're beating definitely isn't going to have a fun time. So really, to just make the game more fun and to make almost every single card viable and able to use, I just have my own individual rule set. I'll put it in the description down below so you guys can use them too if you ever play the Game Boy game, or if you still have your original cards and you don't care about playing them. Maybe just get some sleeves or something. I like to have a few drinks with my buddies and play the original cards, and for a while I didn't even use sleeves, so my cards are a little bit more damaged than the standard person, but it really can be a fun game. And with that, let's dive right in here. So the first card, in just alphabetical order, is going to be Abra. And one thing that's really cool about Abra is just the 0 retreat cost. And, you know, he's got the coin flip 10 damage, so you can actually kind of stall a little bit if you don't have a good hand, and if you just want to do a little bit of damage. You can't stall for too long because his HP is pretty low, and that's really probably why I'm going to drop him down to C tier personally. I think a lot of these basic Pokemon I'm going to kind of end up putting in C tier, but really that retreat costs, the fact that there isn't one there, is a huge deal. Whenever you have a basic Pokemon or even evolved Pokemons that have 0 retreat cost, that's kind of going to bump someone up quite a bit. And then the second card is Aerodactyl. I really like this card. So Aerodactyl has the ability where neither player can evolve Pokemon anymore, and if you're playing with the rule set that I have, evolved Pokemon are used much more commonly. I mean, I limit the amount of single stage Pokemon cards you can have in your deck, so you're going to want to put more evolved Pokemon out there. And really, if you already have an evolved Pokemon on your side, I mean, you can't evolve anymore when you have this guy out there, but you kind of have control of when you can kill him off or something like that. You can do a lot of work with Aerodactyl. So, you could even pair him up with the Promo Mew, which isn't part of the base Fossil or Forest set, so I'm not going to have that on here. But you could pair him up with the Promo Mew card, which has De-Evolution Beam, which normally is a pretty useless attack unless they'll die just from having less HP. But yeah, it's that, and along with the one thing that's really neat about this card too is honestly Wing Attack. It's all colorless energy, so this is pretty much a colorless card. So you can use it in any deck, you just have to have Mysterious Fossil in there. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going good for this card. I'm going to barely squeak it into S tier. I don't know if it's quite as good as the rest of the cards that I'm going to throw in that tier, but I really like it. It's a really cool card. Alakazam is an obvious S tier card. He's got the ability to move damage counters around from any of your Pokemon to a different one. One thing that's kind of disappointing about Alakazam is just, one, you're not retreating him if you put him out there, but two, Kadabra does more damage. He does 50, so before you evolve him, you can do 50 damage, and this one does 30 with a chance to confuse. It's a good attack, but it is a little disappointing sometimes when you wonder if I should evolve into Alakazam in some situations just because you're doing more with Kadabra. But yeah, that's a great Pokemon card. One thing that I even have, one specific rule, is that you can team it up with Tentacool, and a lot of people team it up with Chansey, just because you could scoop up Chansey, or it's just a lot of HP there. But yeah, if you team him up with Tentacool, I would limit the amount of Tentacool that you could put in your deck. I think that's what I have in my rules, just because Tentacool is a very good card, because you can scoop it up, so you're healing 20, and you can do it once a turn. You could have 4 of those, and you're healing 80 HP every turn. It would be insanely good with Alakazam. And then the next card is going to be Arbok. It's not a bad card, because it can immediately poison, which is probably why I'm going to put it into B tier. But it's going to pretty much just stay in B tier, I think. The immediate poison's good, but the 3 energy card cost to do it is a bit much, and the 60 HP really isn't helping it. It's not a particularly great card, but I would like to put it into a deck, and just something that can immediately poison can definitely mess up a lot of the other cards that you're going to face, because poison damage, at least in the original Pokemon card game, does 10 damage each side turn. So you can do a lot of damage very quickly by poisoning. So if any card has a chance to poison, it's probably getting ranked pretty high for me. Then you have Arcanine. Arcanine is a very good card. It's got a lot of HP, and it can do 80 damage. It can hurt itself, or it does hurt itself when it does 80 damage. But really, 80 damage is such an absurd amount. You're going to be one-hitting most guys that you face. So even if you're doing 30 to yourself, you're taking out like 3 of their guys at least. And that's assuming that you don't use something like, if they have basic Pokemon out and you could kill them with 50, you could take out their entire side with Arcanine. Maybe it's an S tier card. It's really good. I'm going to put it into A tier though. It's just not one of my favorites. So, and then you have Articuno. I really, this card I think is really good in like the standard play. I just don't like the fact that you need to use all of the same energy cards. I like to create split energies when I'm building my decks. And it does make it harder to use these attacks that need 3 water energy or 4 water energy with no colorless slots. But it's a good card. The HP is a little bit lower than the rest of the mystical birds. Maybe Moltres is the same. We'll see when we get there. I can't quite remember. But yeah, I'm gonna just squeak it into A tier. It's Arcanine, I think, is a much better card, but I think a lot of people would disagree with me there. But again, with my rule sets, you can only have one single stage, or you can only have one of these single stage cards in your deck, one of each. So you can only have one Articuno in your deck, and it does limit how useful it is, I think. And then you have Beedrill. Beedrill is a very good card. It's got no retreat cost. It can poison. It is a flip a coin to poison, but does 40 damage with no retreat cost, 80 HP. It might be a little difficult to get out there, but I don't know. It's not bad, because even the card you evolve it from is pretty good in itself. It can also chance to poison with 2 energy cards. This one it's close to S tier for me. I really like Beedrill, but I'm just gonna stick it into a high A with Arcanine. So Bellsprout I'm going to put into D tier. It's got Call for Family. I mean, you could get more Bellsprout, but 10 damage, you can't paralyze, 40 HP, doesn't have a free retreat. It's a D tier card, it's not that great. And Bill is an S tier card. Bill is just draw 2 cards. There's not a single deck you're going to have out there where you're disappointed that you just drew a Bill. So, in that case, I mean, every deck you're going to kind of want one. Even with my limitations on trainer cards, if you can only have 1 Bill in your deck, you're still going to want to put that Bill in there. And then Blastoise, that's an S tier card. You can place as many water energies as you want per turn. This helps like even more. I mean, it probably helps even more, honestly, without my rules, but it helps even with my rules. It's just being able to set up all of your different water types immediately in one turn is a huge deal, especially if you pair it with Professor Oak, where you just get like 4 water energies in one hand out of nowhere, and you can immediately fully power up some of these really good Pokemon. So it's a really fun card to use, and yeah, just all of those original 3 Pokemon they're all really cool. Then you have Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur is an okay card. It's a standard C. It can heal it heals you 10 pretty much every single time you attack with Leech Seed. That does 20. It takes 2 energies, so it's a little bit of a pain for just throwing it out there. But yes, any card like that can heal is definitely pretty cool. Which is a reason why I really like Butterfree. Butterfree can heal for 20 every turn, has 70 HP, which is the most out of anyone that can heal itself, I believe, out of these base cards. free retreat cost. It's a pain to get all of those grass energies on Butterfree, but if you do, yeah, you're going to be sitting pretty well once you get this guy out there. And Caterpie, this is a pretty standard card. It can paralyze, so you can stall with them. That's about the best you can say for Caterpie. Chansey's an S tier. You could put it out there to stall with Crunch, but even with double colorless, you can pump up its energies pretty quick, and it's doing 80 damage. Like I said earlier, 80 damage is enough to pretty much one-hit most guys that you're facing. It's got 1 retreat cost with 120 HP. It's a very good card, even if you can only put one of them in your deck, and even if you can limit the double colorless you can put in your deck, because I technically count it as like a trainer card that you're eating up, so you really don't want to put more than one of them in your deck. But even with that, you can still power it up pretty quickly and just do 80 damage. You're going to kill yourself in 2 turns if you're attacking with it, but you're going to take out some built-up guy that they have on their side. They could have a completely pumped-up Articuno with 70 and it's dead, or a Beedrill with 80 and it's dead. So, really good card. So, Charizard is a card that they do not consider good inside of like the base standard play. But if you're doing like twin energy decks, which is the way that I normally like to play, this card's awesome because you can do 100 damage. It's going to one-hit everybody except for another Charizard or Chansey. And just being able to use any energy when you have a 2-energy deck. Heck, you can put Charizard, Charmander, and Charmeleon, which are the cards that I'm going to quickly throw down. Charmander is also a very good card, but it's got Scratch, and Charmeleon has... No, Charmeleon's close to an A, but yeah, I'll give it a B. But yeah, Charmeleon also has Slash for 30. And all of these cards can be used on technically any type, but Ember and Flamethrower for Charmander and Charmeleon are both very good moves. So missing out on those, it limits their usability a little bit. But yeah, just the fact that you have that option to use it in like a grass deck or a water deck is very cool. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. I love Clefable in this game. Just Metronome. It's 1 energy card cost. If you're going up against a Charizard, you can use Flame or Fire Spin right back at him, or Double Edge, which would kill you. But you can use any move that your opponent has. So if you're facing one of their fully pumped up Pokemon, you just need 1 energy. You slap this down on Clefable, send them out there, and they might be able to take it down. If not, they're doing a lot of damage to it. Clefairydoll's a horrible Pokemon card. It wouldn't be horrible in like a bubble, but since Mysterious Fossil exists and you can evolve Mysterious Fossil, I'm pretty sure Clefairydoll's useless. And I think a lot of people that bought booster packs as a kid would get pretty upset if you got a Clefairydoll as your rare. Clefairy has the same ability as Clefable, but it costs 3 energies, so it's not quite as good, doesn't have the same HP. It's probably a B card. It's not bad. It's certainly, as far as a single stage that evolves into something else, it's a pretty good ranking, but it's not particularly, it's not really great by itself. Definitely not Clefable, even though it has the same move. Cloyster is kind of a missed opportunity. One thing I really like about Pokemon cards is that Pokemon that I never used in Red and Blue growing up as a kid, I could still possibly use the Pokemon card. Like, I never used Poliwrath, but I really like the Poliwrath Pokemon card. You never really use Beedrill outside of the beginning of the game, but the Beedrill card's really cool. Sadly, Cloyster was one of those Pokemon that I would like to use, but the card really isn't that great. I'm going to put it in D tier. It's got moves where it can do damage, but it's all coin flip, so there's a chance that you won't even do damage. It has a higher retreat cost. Not a particularly great card. Computer search, take care, or get rid of 2 of your cards, search your deck for 1. Always useful. This is a card, Cubone, that I think is pretty close to a B for me, but I'd probably keep it in the C category just barely. It's able to keep itself alive with its first move against other like weaker cards like these, other C tier cards or just basic evolution cards that evolve into something else. It's able to keep itself alive pretty well, and Rage also does damage for each damage counter on it, so if you get yourself with 30 damage counters, which you can kind of do by using his first move, that's 40 damage for 2 energy card costs. That's pretty good, but maybe it's just a card that I think is good in my head. It's not really one that I've ever really used. so I guess I'll stick it into C, but I don't know. This is probably a card that's really liked by people if you don't play with my rules, but playing with my rules, and maybe it's just a personal opinion of mine, maybe it is still good. I don't really care for Defender. It's a one-use card. You use it for one turn. It can keep you alive. It just takes away 20 damage next turn. I don't care for it. I'm gonna put De-Evolution Spray into F tier. It seems pointless to me. You shouldn't be evolving Pokemon if you don't have energy cards to use their attacks, which is the only way that that could come in handy. Maybe it's good in, or it's got uses, I should say, in if you're playing a game against someone that has 4 energy removals and super energy removals, so you need to devolve your guy, but that's not a position you want to be in to begin with, and I don't personally play with rules that allow you to have that many energy removals, because the game isn't fun when you're able to do that. It's a pretty bad game. And Doongong, that's an S tier for me. I love Doongong. Seal's a good card, so it's easy to get Doongong out there and just do 50 damage with 3 energy card costs, and then have the chance to paralyze with 4 if you really need it. That's a great card. So Diglett, I think I'm going to put Diglett into B. Just being able to do 30 damage with 2 energies is really good. Sadly, that's kind of the way all fighting cards are, is they do a lot of damage, but a lot of guys, because Ghost type and Flying type have resistance to fighting, which knocks down their damage by 30. But yeah, I don't know. It's a really good card. I really like it. It's obviously the retreat cost being nothing helps immensely. 30 HP is not a lot, but hey, you're doing 30 damage. You could take out someone, like even if they have a Machop, which is a really good start. If you get to attack first with this guy, you're doing 30, he does 20, you do 30. You took out a Machop. Or someone with 60 HP. You still take him out. I like the card, so I'm putting it into B. I could see why people would argue against that, but I like it. Ditto is a card that I'm going to put into A tier. You can transform into your opponent's Pokemon. It does kind of suck if they, switch out or something into someone with less HP after you've been attacked a few times. Plus, unlike Clefable, where you only need 1 energy card, you have to match theirs with Ditto, so not really as great. Dotrio is a card I never used as a kid, but that's going into S tier. Dodrio's great. It's got retreat costs like nothing, so you can just take it out right away. It lowers the retreat cost, its Pokemon power, of everyone else on your team by 1, so a lot of your cards then will have 0 retreat cost. Enrage is just a great move. With 70 HP and it does 10 plus the number of damage counters. If they have 4 damage counters on you, you're doing 50 damage. It's a really good card. Doduo is just a standard okay card. I'm just going to throw it into C. Maybe close to D, honestly, but the no retreat cost is what's going to bump it up into C. Double Colorless is a great card. I'm going to go ahead and throw that into S tier. You can use it immediately to power up a Clefable right away, which, I mean, you don't really need 2 energy on Clefable, but, throw it on a Chansey and just some of these other normal types coming up. Even Charizard, if you mix it in with that, it's a really good card. I'm going to throw Dragonair into A tier. Hyper Beam's a really cool move, being able to take away energy. It's even better, I'd say, without the energy removals being as prevalent in the rules that I play. So you can really start damaging, even if you're only doing 20 at a time, damaging your opponent by just taking away their energies. It's a pretty darn good card. And honestly, Dragonite, man, Dragonite's one of my favorite Pokemon, so putting it into B tier hurts me a little bit, the Pokemon card. But I don't know, this card I really don't like. The 1 retreat cost is nice for the amount of damage it can do, so maybe I could barely pump it up into A tier for that. But Step In really doesn't come in handy too much. You can switch with one of your Pokemon that you have out. It's neat enough, but really its attack just takes 4 energy card costs, and it's doing 40 for 2 coin flips. It's not a great attack. I accidentally misclicked and threw him into B, but I guess I'm gonna... Oh, I'll throw him into A. I like Dragonite. It's just, the card, I don't... It's usable, especially if you have it with Dragonair. So, if you have Dragonair and you need more HP, or you just want that chance to do more damage. But yeah, not a particularly great card. Drowsy, he can confuse for 2 energies. He's pretty good. He's definitely in C. I really like Dotrio. Dotrio is definitely an A card. Dotrio can do a lot of damage, 70 with Earthquake. It hurts your own bench, but if you don't have a bench, you're just doing 70 damage. Very good. I wish its retreat cost was less, since Dotrio is supposed to be quick, but whatever. Eevee's a C tier. It's got quick attack, which is pretty good, and it can stall with its first attack. So quick attack can do up to 30 if you get a good coin flip. There's nothing wrong with that card. It's a pretty standard start. Honestly, Ekans, I kind of like the idea of putting Ekans into B tier just for the simple fact that it can poison with 1 energy. And poison, if you do get the coin flip, it's a coin flip. It will really mess up anything that your opponent tries doing. Sadly, it doesn't do 10 damage, so that hurts it a little bit. But then Wrap with 2 energy card cost doing 20. If it's not B tier, it's really close. I'll stick it in C tier, but okay, well, Electabuzz is S tier. There's no denying that. Electabuzz is probably the best card in the game. It can paralyze you with 1, and it can do 40 if it gets a coin flip with 2. It's absurd. Just the damage of doing 40 with 2 energy that you can lay down immediately, and 70 HP, it's a dumb card. It's nice because electric types, there's not a lot of them, so it balances out well if you only allow yourself to have 1 of them per deck. But yeah, if you have 4 of those, you're gonna win because it's not fun. That's an absurdly good card. So I really like this Electabuzz, or this Electrode. It can do 50 damage, and it can turn into energy cards for other Pokemon on your bench. It has a lot of HP. And it does like 10 to itself when it attacks, but that's really not asking a lot. For most of the time when you do 50 damage, you're going to have some negative, and 10's not really a huge negative. So I'm going to stick into A tier, but it's pretty close to being in S tier. And the other Electrode is either in B tier or A tier. I'm going to slightly squeak it into A tier. It can do 20 damage with, any energy, which is kind of nice. And it does 20, then damages their bench for all the same type. If you're doing a single type deck, which I really don't play because I'd have to play it against other single type decks, but it's fun to play those two, I guess. It's just not the way I normally do it. But if you did that, then you're hurting probably everyone on their bench unless they have normal types. So as long as they're the same type as the guy you're attacking, you're doing 10 damage to each one of their bench. You can do a lot of bench damage quickly that way. So it's neat. It's got its use, but I think I like the other Electrode more. Energy Removal is an insanely good S tier card when you're playing with the rule that you can have 4 of them in your deck. That's dumb, because you take away, you can use as many trainer cards as you want in the base rules. So you could take away 4, or even if you only had 2 of them in your hand, 2 energy cards from your opponent and lose nothing. That's really good. When you can only have 1 of these, though, in your deck, it loses a lot of its appeal. It still has its use. I'm going to put it into probably, it's either B or A. I'm going to stick it into B. I don't like playing against it. It's not particularly fun. I think it's more fun if you have to build up a move like Dragonair's Hyper Beam or something like that. Energy Retrieval is great if you have less energy in your deck because you can just take 2 from your discard pile, but honestly, it's pretty good even if you don't. It's a B tier card. That's good for getting more energy, and you could use less energy then, which means you could throw more Pokemon in your deck. Or if you're playing with the base rules, more trainers. It's a good card. It's fun to use. Energy Search is also, well, Energy Search is a B tier because I like to make the 2 energy card decks 2 different types. So it's nice to make sure that you get that right type every single time you pick it up. And Execute, or Executor, or which one is this? It's so hard for me to actually read this text. It's a super small card. I'm going to edit in some bigger ones, but I do not visually see those while I'm making this. So some of this stuff I'm relying from memory, so I might get a few things wrong. Either way, the card can heal itself. It's a better Bulbasaur. It gives you a little bit more options, more HP. I'd still put it into C tier, but it's definitely really good. Exeggutor is close to S tier, but I'm going to stick it into A tier. It can do 20 damage for each coin flip, for each energy. Really good move. It can't really retreat, it just kind of sits out there and does a lot of damage. You pump it up like crazy. But if you get a lot of energies on there, I mean, you're probably going to do like, if you had like, we'll just say 6 energies, and you get half of those, you're doing 60 damage per turn. It's a lot of energy, and you just kind of keep on piling them on because you can do even more than 6. It's a good card. It can do a lot of damage pretty quickly. I don't like Farfetch'd. I'm going to stick it into D tier. It doesn't evolve into anything. Leak Slap you need to get lucky to use, and then Pot Smash is not bad for 30, but really the HP is pretty low. So yeah, I don't really like that card. Pharaoh has 0 retreat cost. It's not a card I use very often, but it's a card that I really like when I look at it. Being able to do 40 damage, agility, so you can actually take someone out and then possibly not even get hit by the next guy. No retreat cost, 70 HP. Man, I'm going to stick him into A tier. Like, that's a card I don't really use very often, but maybe it's just I didn't have it as a kid. I don't know if I have it yet, honestly, as a physical card. That might be a card I want to pick up. But, it's a really cool card. That card's really good. I'm going to put all the evolutions, I think, into A tier. They're all really good. So just Flareon real quick. It costs 4 energies, but I think you only need to remove 1 to do 60. Quite a bit of HP. It's just you know, it evolves straight from Eevee, so it's not like a 3rd stage evolution. It does a lot of damage, has pretty good HP, only 1 retreat cost. Those are all good cards. Full heal, I think I like Switch more, but there are times when you want to use a full heal instead of a Switch. But Switch also gets rid of any status on your character. I guess B, but yeah, it's close to C for me. Gambler's probably, I like this card. I think it's a lot of fun. If you play with my rules, where you can only have 1 Professor Oak in your deck, having a Professor Oak and a Gambler is kind of possibly another Professor Oak. So it's definitely got its uses that can put into B, but since you have to hit a coin flip, and you can really do a lot of damage to yourself by using this and not getting the coin flip, I'll just stick it into C tier. So this Ghastly's horrible. It's got a move that allows it to discard an energy. You have to flip a coin to get someone to fall asleep, and then they have to flip a coin again. So it doesn't work as a stall card. It's got no HP. It's got no retreat cost, but it doesn't matter. You never want to use that card. It's an F tier. The other Ghastly, however, is probably a B tier. It's got no retreat cost. It can stall for quite a bit. Has 50 HP. Energy conversion, I don't even remember what it does, but I think that's fairly good too, or it's not bad. Gengar is in S tier, as soon as I can scroll up here. Being able to move around just 1 damage counter might not seem like a lot on your opponent's side, but it's a cool ability, and you can easily just, as soon as they retreat someone back that has a bunch of HP, you can slowly move them down to take someone out. You can do a lot with that. Honestly, Geodude I'm going to throw into D tier. Maybe it's because I feel like I'm always unlucky with coin flips, but yeah, you flip until you get heads. I faced someone, I remember when I was a kid, that got like 8 coin flips in a row and took out like one of my really strong guys with it in 1 turn. That doesn't happen when I use it. It just seems to happen when someone else uses it. So for me, it's a D tier, just because it costs 2 energy card costs to maybe do 10 damage. I really like Gloom, so I'm going to put Gloom in, it's not quite A tier, but a high B tier. It can poison immediately with 1 energy, and with 2, it's got a chance to confuse. You're screwing over whoever you face. It's a good card. Golbat is a card I almost want to put into A tier. It's got no retreat cost, and it only does 20, but it can heal itself 20 whenever it attacks. I'm going to put it in A tier. I really like Golbat. 60 HP is a little low, but yeah, just being able to heal yourself 20 makes that 60 HP kind of goes a much longer way. And being able to retreat back immediately, it's pretty darn good. Goldine's going to go right into D tier, it just does 10, there's nothing special there. It's got no retreat cost, which is pretty good actually, I didn't see that before. But that's really about it. D tier's, I mean, maybe it scratches C tier because of the retreat cost, but that's all it has. For Golduck is an interesting card. I'd say it's probably A tier. I mean, it's got less energy card cost to do the same move as Dragonair, and you can take away their energy. That's really good. Is that 70 HP or 70 HP? Yeah, 70 HP is definitely A tier. That's a good card. That's a card that I never really use a lot, but I don't think I own it again. I like the physical cards. I own quite a few of these cards since I was a kid, yeah, but I just don't own all of them. That's one I should pick up, though. That one seems pretty darn good. I'm going to put Golem into A tier. It does a lot of damage, has quite a bit of HP. Self-Destruct is a move you never want to use, but you can if it's low on health and you're facing someone strong. It's a cool card. It's not particularly... It's, I'd say, barely scratching into A just because... I mean, 60 damage is a lot, but a lot of fighting cards do a lot of damage. But yeah, I'd say it barely scratches into A tier, can do a lot. And then Graveler's kind of the same. Harden is a good defensive move, because I think if they don't do over 30, they can't hurt you. So there's going to be quite a few beginner cards that can't even hurt them. And Rock Throw does 40. It's definitely not bad, so I'll slap it into B. Grimer is a solid B to C card. I'm going to throw it into C, but just stall 50 HP. It's pretty good. Flip a coin. For some odd reason, whenever I face it in the Game Boy game, I swear it gets more heads than every other card. Grimer and Licking Tongue are the cards you never want to face because they'll paralyze you every turn. I'll go up against it with like a Gyarados with 100 HP, and I'm like, well, Gyarados is dead. They're going to get 10 heads in a row and take me out. That's the way it feels. Probably not accurate, but it does feel that way. For Growlithe, I'm just gonna stick Growlithe in a C tier. I mean, Growlithe does pretty good damage, does 20, but it takes 2 energies, so it takes a little bit more to power him up. 60 HP is good. Again, probably close to B tier, but it's okay. Gust of Wind's great. Is Gust of Wind S tier though, or A tier? There's just some other really good trainer cards, so like if you're trying to compare Gust of Wind, obviously it's great if you can have 4 of them too. It's a lot like energy removal, and most trainer cards, if you can have 4 of them in your deck, are really good. But if you're playing with my rules where you can only have 1 of each trainer card, yeah, it's really good. Gust of Wind, I'm going to throw it in S tier. That's a really good card. Gyarados, I'm going to throw in S tier too. Gyarados can just do a lot of damage. Like, it's got a lot of HP, can do a lot of damage with 3 energy card cost, can paralyze with 40. It's a cool card. So this is the Bad Hunter. Bad Hunter, is it a C or a D? Probably a D. You have to get 2 coin flips in a row to attack. You do 50 damage with 2 energy if you get it, but very unlikely. It can stall, I guess, if you just get 1. Not something you want to do. Other Haunter, on the other hand, is either A or S tier. I'm going to put it into S tier, as they need 2 coin flips, no matter who they are, to attack Haunter. It's a great stall, and it's got 0 retreat. I love that Haunter. Hitmonchan is an obvious S tier. It's a ridiculously good card. 1 energy does 20, 3 does 40, 70 HP. You're going to be wrecking a lot of guys really quickly. If you get Hitmonchan as your first card of like just starting a duel with someone, or whatever it is called in this game. I guess duel might be Yu-Gi-Oh! But if you're doing that, you're doing 20 damage right off the bat. They might not even pump up their basic Pokemon if they're smart, and just try to pump up whoever they have on their bench with energies to try to take Hitmonchan down. I don't know what you do. Hitmonlee is still pretty good at 2 energy card cost to hurt their bench, and then 3 for 50. Doesn't quite have the HP. Retreat cost is 1 less, so that's definitely neat, but I'm going to stick that into A tier. Still a good card. Definitely would like to have both of them if you make a fighting deck in your deck. Horsey is a 0 retreat cost and can stall. It's good. It's close to B, but I'm gonna put it into C tier, like most of these basic Pokemon. Hypno is probably a B tier card. It's got a lot of HP, and it's got the same move as Gengar, where it can do 10 damage to one of their bench Pokemon. I forget what its first move does. I think it's okay, but it's not anything spectacular. It might be close to A tier, but man, I don't know. I don't think it's as good as Beedrill or Butterfree or things like that. But maybe it's as good as, it's probably as good as Dragonite, but Dragonite's Dragonite. That's a special card, I guess. Yeah, it's close to an A tier. I could see me throwing it there, but I'm just gonna throw it in B to move on. Imposter Professor Oak, I never really use. I bet you it's good. I bet you it's really good, but I never use it. So screw it, it's going into Lumpy. Item Finder is really good. You're able to get any of them that back, especially when you play with my rules where your trainer cards are limited. So you only have one computer search per deck. You can Item Finder another computer search. That's an S tier card. Ivysaur is going to go at least into B tier. It can poison immediately with 3 energies and can do pretty good damage. I'm going to stick, I think, probably all of these stage 2s here, like Charmeleon. Charmeleon also pretty close to A tier. Yeah, these are good cards. Just the entire base, or like the 3 starters, they're good all around. Jigglypuff is close to B tier. Oh man, should I throw? I'm gonna throw it into C tier, but very high C tier. It's one of those cards. Just being able to do 20, and you can stall with its first move with 60 HP. I mean, it's better than Growth, because it's got the same move, but it can also stall its first turn. It's good. It's maybe I should throw into B. I'm gonna throw into B tier. That's a good card. Again, Jolteon, like I said earlier, all these cards are good. Pin Missile, it can do up to 80 damage if you're ridiculously lucky for 3 energy card costs. It can retreat for 1, 70 HP. Pretty good for a stage 2. Now, keep in mind, you're probably likely doing 40 damage, but just the fact that you have the possibility to do 80 allows you to dream. So it's like, say they have a Beedrill out there, it's just like, you throw Jolteon, it's like, maybe I can take him out. It keeps the dream alive, which is fun. Jinx is either A tier or S tier. That Meditate move, it does 20 the first turn, and then it's going to do, I think, like 40 the turn after that. I'm pretty sure it works with how much damage counters are on the opponent's card. Really good. It starts to do a lot of damage very quickly. And you can lay it down immediately. A tier, it's a high A tier. I think that fits it pretty well. Kabuto is a C tier. One nice thing is Kabuto's Pokemon power is that it halves damage. So it kind of has like 60 HP and can do 10 damage. And I guess if you're doing 10 to him, you don't hurt him. So he's neat. But yeah, the fact that you have to evolve him too. He's a C tier. He's not bad, but he's not great. Kabutops, I mean, I like him almost as much as like Butterfree. It's pretty much the same move, but he's got less HP. You have to evolve him from a mysterious fossil. And he's got a retreat cost, so I have to put Kabutops into B tier. Even though I really like the card. I think it's fun to use, but yeah, I don't know. It's good, but it's not great. Kadabra might be close to an A tier, though. It can heal itself with Recover if you want to discard a Psychic, and doing 50. That's good. Yeah, I'm going to throw Kadabra into A tier. As far as Psychic types go, that's definitely one you want in there. Kakuna. What do I do with Kakuna here? You can poison... Probably B tier. Yeah, he's close to A tier, though. Close to joining Beedrill. Just for the amount of HP and the fact that you can poison with 2 turns, I really like it. But yeah, he's definitely B tier. I don't know. I gave it too much thought. I'm getting in my head. There's going to be quite a few of these that I probably disagree with tomorrow or something. And then we have Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan's S tier. He's got a lot of HP. He can do damage if you want him to. And he can fetch and draw for cards, so he can stall. It's a good card. Kingler is a card I wanted to like. It can do 40 damage. Flail, I think, is its first move. It does damage for each damage counter on him, so you can do up to 50 with just 1 energy card. But really, its retreat cost makes it kind of bad, so I'm going to throw into C tier. Makes me sad. I like Kingler. Coughing is a great card. You get 2 energy cards, and the card you're facing is kind of screwed, because they're either poisoned or confused, and both of those are really good conditions to throw on someone. Krabby has the same problem as Kingler. So although I think Krabby would be a good card if it wasn't for the 2 retreat cost thing, it's just enough for me to knock it into D tier. It's really annoying when you can't retreat these cards. Lapras is going to go ahead and go into S tier. Water Gun does a lot of damage quickly, it can confuse, and has a lot of HP. It's a great card. Okay, so I did not have Lass while growing up, so I don't know the card quite as well as I possibly should. It's just whenever I don't have the card growing up, it's not one that I remember using very much. You and your opponent show each other your hand, then shuffle all trainer cards from your hands into your deck. Okay, that would be very good, I think, if you weren't playing with my rules that limit the amount of trainer cards you can have. Still, seeing what your opponent has in their hand can come in handy, and removing their trainers, even if there's not a lot of them, then they could be holding on to one that's really good and that could really help them. So I'm going to throw that into C tier. Probably a way better card. Well, I'll go ahead and throw it into B tier. But probably like an S tier card for people that aren't using my rules. Licking Tongue is an A tier card. It can paralyze and it holds out for a long time. It's a great stall card. Plus you can confuse with it. You can't retreat it, but it's not a card you really think about retreating. It doesn't cost a lot of energy, so you either scoop it up or it dies. You're okay with that. I love Machamp. Machamp's a great card. Any card that hurts it does 10 damage to itself, plus it does 60 damage. There's a lot of HP. It's a cool card. Machoke, I'm probably also going to throw an A tier right next to it. Just against 60 damage that you can do, it hurts itself, but just doing 60 damage really quickly, that helps a lot. Plus the 50 damage if it's at full health. You can do quite a bit with Machoke pretty quickly. Machop's a B tier just because it doesn't really have a weakness outside of being fighting type, and some cards are resistant to that. Low kick doing 20 damage for 1 energy is really good. 50 HP is good for a basic Pokemon, and just 1 retreat cost. It's a good card. I'm gonna go ahead and throw Magikarp. The problem is it's not as bad as an F tier, but it's a D tier. Maybe it's like an F tier. It's supposed to be bad. It's Magikarp. It doesn't do a lot of damage, has a retreat cost, and has 30 HP. It's supposed to be a bad card, but obviously it evolves into Gyarados, which is really cool. So this is the Magmar that's not as good. The other one's going into S tier. This Magmar, however, can do 30 damage, which is pretty good, but it only has 50 HP, and it can do 50 if it discards an energy, also really good. So it can do damage quickly, but that HP does make it disposable from a lot of cards that your opponent can throw at it pretty quickly. I think it's an A tier. The other one's S tier. This one has 70 HP, you can slap it down, and it can poison with 2 energy cards, and it can stall with the first one. And it's got 1 retreat cost. And that's like that with Electabuzz and Scyther and Hitmonchan. Those are the best cards. Luckily my rules limit that you can only have 1 of them in your deck, but even you still want to have that one if you have a fire deck. Magnemite is a standard C card. It can stall, it can self-destruct, which is actually, it comes in handy a lot more than you think, because just being able to do that 40 damage really quickly. I mean, obviously if you have Electabuzz or something like that, you'd rather do 40 damage that way. But yeah, you kill yourself, but you take out someone else with you. Just the 2 energy cards to do that's pretty good. This Magneton also has self-destruct, but a card like this that you power up with 4 energy cards, it's not really one that you want to self-destruct quite as much. If you have like 10 HP left and you know you're going to die next turn, even then you still might not want to use it, because that means they get to attack whatever Pokemon you send out next. I said that wrong, but I think you get the idea of what it is I'm trying to say. I don't really like the self-destruct move. 60 HP is not a lot. And flip a coin to paralyze for 3 energy is good. 230 damage. That's the attack that you'd use on it. So I don't think it's quite an A tier. I'm gonna throw Magneton into B tier. It's a good card, and same thing with the other Magneton, because again, the self-destruct is not something you really want to use on this particular card. Chansey's nice because you can use Double Edge twice. It doesn't quite kill itself. This one at least has more HP, but Sonic Boom only does 20 damage. It can't paralyze. It only costs 2 energy, so that's pretty neat. But yeah, it's another B tier card. So Maintenance allows you to take 2 cards from your hand so you can draw 1 card from your deck. It's probably good, but my dumb brain can't think of how it is good, so I'm just going to throw that into F tier. That seems really bad. Probably good, probably like S tier or something, but I can't think of how. So Mankey allows, it's got 0 retreat cost, it can do 10 damage, but it can't stall like an Abra can, because it's not a coin flip. but it allows you to peek either at your opponent's hand or your prize cards. It's, you know, it'd be cool to have on your bench to know what all your prize cards are. That could give you a pretty big advantage. But yeah, it's just going to be in C tier for me. It's not something that I see myself using too often. Marowak, this card's disappointing. I think there's a lot of people that like Cubone and like Marowak, and the best move that this card has, I think, is that Boomerang. So it can do 30 damage for each coin flip and it only costs 2 energy cards. It's not bad. But if it's in B tier, it's just barely in B tier. It's close to C tier. This card in particular I really don't think is too great just because its HP is pretty low and you have to flip coins to do damage with it. Keep in mind 30 is pretty good on average, so I'll stick it into B tier just because 30 on average is pretty good, but not a card I'd enjoy using. Meowth is just going to be a standard C card. You can possibly draw a card, do 10 damage. It takes 2 energy cards to use, though, to do 10 damage. Not great, but not bad either. Metapod is going to go ahead and go into B tier. You could paralyze. It's not quite as good as Kakuna because while paralysis is good and can help you stall, Kakuna poisons, which kind of screws over the other guy. Kakuna has more HP. But it's still really good. It's got quite a bit of HP at 70 and can paralyze with just 2 energy card costs. It's a good card. Mewtwo is probably an S tier. So you can put up a barrier, which is something you're probably not going to want to do unless you're trying to get them to deck out. But Psychic does 10, I believe, it does 10 plus 10 for each energy card on your opponent's Pokemon. So, you know, if they have like 3 energy cards, you're doing 40 damage for 2 energy card costs. The retreat cost is not great. HP is okay at 60, but yeah, really just, you can do damage quickly with this card. It doesn't take a lot of investment to get it to where it is you wanted. So, barely scratching S tier for me, but I think one of the best decks you can make when you don't have limitations is just 4 Mewtwo's and all Psychic Energies, because you can just barrier over and over. Chances are they can't kill you in 1 or 2 turns. And then you just can't lose. But at least with my rules where you can only have 1 Mewtwo, I don't know, yeah, I wouldn't play a deck if someone came up with me with a deck like that, I just wouldn't play them. I'd be like, nah dude, I'm not doing that. Nah dude, that's not fun. Why would you, no. I'm going to go ahead and throw Moltres into A tier. That might be a little generous, just because you have to flip a coin, so it's like you have to get lucky, but you do 80, which is a lot of damage if you do get heads, and it's just 1 coin flip. 70 HP isn't particularly great. I think the other move, I can't see it, it's a little too small, but if I remember right, it drains their deck. Probably not something that you're probably going to end up doing with a fire deck, draining your opponents, unless they have unless they've been stalling for a pretty long time, and maybe it can come in handy. But it's still, 80 damage is pretty good. It's a fun card to use. Choose a Pokemon on your bench and shuffle it and any cards attached to it into your deck. That's really good because it's essentially a scoop up, but it doesn't go into your hand, and you shuffle it and any cards attached to it, so even the energies, into your deck. However, you have to retreat to use it, so you have to have enough energies on there. I'm going to throw that into A tier, because if you retreat it and then use this, you get all of the evolution cards and all of the energy cards at least still in your deck. You don't have to throw it in the discard pile. All the energy cards and evolution cards, and it's got its advantages. That's a really good card. Mr. Mime's an S tier. You can't do over 20 damage to it per turn. It has 40 HP and it does 10 damage plus the number of damage counters, so its damage keeps on stacking while you can't even hurt it. It's a great card. You can team it up with Alakazam and do absurd amount of damage while they can't even hurt you because you're just taking away damage counters. Really good. If you have an Alakazam deck, you want Mr. Mime in there too. I believe Muck gets rid of all Pokemon powers. Very good. Is it an S tier or an A tier? I think I'm going to put it into A tier just because it doesn't automatically poison or something like that. If it auto-poisoned, I think you have to flip a coin with the 30 damage. It would definitely be an S tier for me. There'd be no denying it. It's pretty close to an S tier, the way it is now. Just getting rid of all these Pokemon powers like Charizard, if you're using a different deck, it'd be hard to attack with it. And of course, you're stopping Mr. Mime and Alakazam. There's a lot you can do with this card. It's really good. Yeah, I'm gonna go, yeah, S tier, whatever. It's close. I'd say barely into S tier, but yeah, we're getting closer to the end of this list. This video is definitely going to be a long one, and my voice is going to be a little bit out, but it is fun to think about these cards. I really enjoy it. This is a standard C card, Mysterious Fossil. It can evolve into something else. It doesn't cost a prize card, so you can stall one turn with it. You can't retreat, which is a problem. Nidoking, I love this card. If you hit him with Toxic, you're doing 60 damage by the time it comes back to you, because it does 20 damage for each poison. The fact, any card that automatically poisons is good, but a card that automatically poisons for 20 damage, it takes out anyone you're facing super quick. It has a lot of HP, it only costs 3 energy cards to do it. I love Nidoking, it's a great card. Nidoqueen, on the other hand, is disappointing. Mega Punch doing 50 isn't bad. Maybe it scratches just barely into A tier just because it has quite a bit of HP, but honestly, it's close to B tier for me. The boyfriend's move that it has counts the number of Nidoking, only Nidoking. It does 20 damage. It could do 40 damage for the number of Nidoking, and I still don't know if it'd be a good move. Yeah, it's just disappointing how the only real good attack on it is Mega Punch doing 50. Which is a good attack, but for a third stage evolution card, you normally want something really cool or unique going on. So I'm gonna barely scratch it into A, but it's not as good as Butterfree or Beedrill, and it's probably better than some of the other cards I have in B. I don't know. That card's pretty close to a B card for me. And then you have Nidoran, the female version. It can do 30 damage if you're really lucky. It can call for help, has 60 HP. It's a standard C card. It can do pretty well. Same thing with this Nidoran. It can do 30 damage with 1 coin flip. Chances are you have a much better chance, I think, of doing damage. Even though you think the luck would be the same, I feel like I'd do more damage with this Nidoran. Just doing 30 for 1. I guess, hey, you think the odds would be the same, where you're doing like 1.5 damage per turn with both of them, but this one has more HP. But I don't know, there's something, maybe it's just the 30 damage, like plopping that all down at once is really advantageous. So it's like being able to plop down, like even the Moltres that does 80, just being able to do that immediately is a good defensive move. So it's like, say you're up against Charmeleon or something, and I guess I'll just use Moltres as an example here. You could have someone that does 40 damage each turn consistently, but then you're getting hit by the Charmeleon. But if you do get lucky and get that 80 damage, you take out that Charmeleon in one hit and you take nothing. So it is a gambler's game, but just the fact that you have that option to take no damage and have that happen, it is nice to have that card. I do like that Nidoran. And then you have Nidorina. It's a card that I don't really use because I don't really care for Nidoqueen very much. But it's not bad by itself. It can do 30 damage for each coin flip, so it's got the same move but more energy card cost than Marowak. But it can also confuse and has more HP than Marowak, and it can evolve into something else. It's a B tier card. Nidorino, that's a great card. That card's like high B tier, just because it can do that same 30 damage. It's got that same move, but then it's also got the 50 damage move, and it evolves into Nidoking. It's great. It's a really good card. I guess it's got less HP, but yeah, that consistent 50 damage is, you're going to be able to take some people out with this. I like Ninetales a lot, but I don't know if it's quite the same tier as Charizard. So Ninetales only has to discard 1 energy card to do 80 damage, but that's when it's pumped up all the way. I think that Lure move, being able to kind of gust to win them, even though it takes up your move, is so good that it's just enough to put it into S tier. But that's one that's really close to being into A tier, just because what's nice about Charizard when you're using dual type decks like I normally do, just because it is fun to mix it up. I mean, I have a dual type deck, and then I normally give my buddy a dual type deck too, so we both have them. It's kind of a disadvantage. I think single type decks are better. But if you're using a dual type deck, it's nice to have that energy thing on Charizard, and just needing 4 of them. It's hard to get 4 of the same type of energy when you're in a dual type deck. If you're in a single type deck, I bet you this card's obviously S tier. But I'm just going to barely scratch it into S tier. It's a cool card either way. Ninetales is a cool Pokemon. Oddish is going to go into C tier. It's great to stall, to 10 damage, coin flip, 50 HP. It's good. Ammonite's going into C tier. It does suck again. That has to evolve from Mysterious Fossil. You don't want a card that evolves into the C tier. But, you know, Water Gun's not a bad move. You can put 3 energy cards on them and do 30 damage. And then I'm pretty sure you can look at their hand with Clairvoyance, if I'm remembering that correctly. But, it's definitely, it's not bad, but it's not great either. And Amistar, it's going to be barely into B. It's got 70 HP, which is pretty good. And for 2 energy card costs, it could do kind of the same move as Marowak. But it's also got Water Gun, which can consistently do, I think, 50 damage with a lot of energy. And with 1 retreat cost, yeah, that card's definitely in B. That's a good card. That's better than I thought it was. Unless it can only do 40 damage, but even 40 with Water Gun. I'd have to look into that, but I think that's definitely B tier. That's pretty darn good. Onyx is one that I'm wondering if it's B tier or C tier, because Harden is a pretty good stall move, and 90 HP is pretty good. Just not being able to paralyze or anything with its first attack that does 10 each turn. It's going to die way quicker than a Lickitung does, just because you don't have that coin flip saving you every time. So, it's definitely not worse than a C tier, but I'm not sure if it's a B tier card. It's a card that I think I like. I like the idea of using Harden, but if you use Harden for too long, they do over 30 damage to you. They hit you for all their damage. So it's only moves that are below 30 that you can hold out for a while. And if it didn't have Harden, it'd definitely be C tier. So I guess, I like Onyx. Screw it, I'll throw him into B tier. I like the Pokemon, even before he had Steelix. This Parasect disappoints me, because Parasect is a card I'd never use in the game, but I want the Pokemon card to be good. At least if you play Game Boy GB2, like Here Comes Team Rocket, or whatever the heck it's called. I think that's it. You get a better Parasect that can heal itself and poison, and might even have 70 HP instead of 60. So it's just an all-around better Parasect. But really, the only advantage that this Parasect has, its first move is really bad, because it takes 2 energy cards for a chance to make them fall asleep. The only advantage that this card has is that you can use it in any deck, because its first move's so bad that you almost don't want to use it. It's a stall move, I guess, if you use it in a grass deck, but it's not very good. And you can do 30 damage to it because all of its cards are colorless. But the 60 HP for an evolution isn't great. And it's kind of the same thing with Paris. Yeah, just 40 HP. I guess Paris is probably about the same level, just because 20 damage isn't bad. I'd say it's better than the cards that you get in most D tier. I mean, Krabby is probably a better card than Paris, but the problem with Krabby is that you can't retreat it, and that's really what makes it worse. Yeah, Parasect is disappointing. Is that the only second stage I have in C tier? I mean, it's kind of deserving of it though. You're better off with almost any other grass type, especially ones that poison. If this poisoned immediately with 2 energy card costs instead of making them fall asleep, this would be a B tier card for me at least. But falling asleep is not a condition that's that good. I like Persian a lot. It can do 30 damage, and then I think you minimize the next attack by 10, no matter what. But it's not the best. The no retreat cost thing, also great. 70 HP is pretty good. It's definitely, it's a higher B. It's up there with like Charmeleon and stuff. But yeah, it's not quite an A tier. It's not that good. Pidgeotto, on the other hand, is an A tier. This is a card that, when you first read it, you probably think it's like an S tier, but sadly when you use it most of the time, so what its move does, it can do 20 damage, and then it can do 30, and when you hit him with the 30 attack and it doesn't kill him, it knocks it and all of its cards into your opponent's hand. So they just start laying it back down again, but it takes them one turn to put an energy down each time, and it takes them one turn to evolve them each time, so it's a really good move. The only real problem with it is that you're kind of taking like 10 damage each turn they do something like that. If they have a basic Pokemon that they can use for 1 energy and do 10 damage. So if you're using that move on them each turn, they're doing 10 damage to you and stuff like that. I mean, you can use Wing Attack and then hit them with the 30 damage if they only have 50 HP, which is what you'd probably end up doing. And it's closer to S tier. It's a really good A tier if it's not S tier, especially with the fact that it's 0 retreat. It's a really cool card. I love using it, but it does have some problems where it's not quite as good as you want it to be. Pidgeotto I don't really care for using, so getting to Pidgeot is a problem for me. I'm gonna stick it into C tier, I think. I think it's got Mirror Move for 3 energy. It's not something you want to use very often. I think it just copies whatever just hurt Pidgeotto. So it's only got 60 HP, so the most you could do is 50, but then Pidgeotto's almost dead. And then it's got a move that blows them away, and I guess it's kind of like a Gust of Wind, but they get to choose. So I mean that can have its advantages, but yeah, I mean. Yeah, I'm just going to throw it into C tier. I don't like it that much. And then Pidgey's also a C tier. It's a pretty standard card. It takes 2 to do that whirlwind attack. It's kind of like a Meowth. It's okay. Pikachu's a high C tier. Being able to do 30 damage with 2 energy card costs, even if you hurt yourself, that's pretty good. The other Pikachu's probably also a high C tier because it takes 2 energy, which kinda sucks, and they both have to be lightning, which again, if you're using a split energy type deck, you might not get. But just being able to do 20 damage is good, and then being able to do an extra damage counter to your opponent's bench is also very good. So it's a good card. Both of these Pikachus are good cards if you're using a lightning deck. Pinsir is A tier, I think. It's right there with Hitmonlee. It's not quite as good as Scyther, kind of like its rival card, but it's really good. It's got 60 HP, only 1 retreat cost, can do 50 damage with Guillotine, and can paralyze with 2. It's a very good card. Maybe that one's closer to S tier, but I'm going to stick it into A tier. It's a card I really like using, but not quite S tier. I think Power Plus is a card that's really good in the base rules. I don't like it that much, so it's going in there with Defender. It just does 10 extra damage for 1 turn. It can come in handy. I get it. I don't use it in my decks. I don't think it's fun. So Pokeball, you have to flip a coin, but then you can get any basic revolution. The fact that you have to flip a coin makes it a little less reliable, and if you could have 4 of them in your deck, I think that's really good, because chances are you're going to get some heads with that. But with my rules, where you can only have 1 of them in your deck, it's risky, so I'm going to throw it into C tier. It does help if you get it. I'm going to throw Pokedex into D tier. Pokedex allows you to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and rearrange them. Most of the time when I use this, I realize the top 5 cards in my deck are just garbage, and it just ruins any motivation I have to play the game. It's like, oh, I guess the hope I had that I had good cards coming is just not true. This sucks. So it just makes me unhappy when I use that card. It's not fun. Pokemon Breeder's in S tier. If you're using a lot of evolved cards like Blastoise or Charizard, Gengar, Alakazam, Machamp, you can do it straight from Machop, and it only takes 1 turn. I mean, you still need to put energy cards on them, so chances are it's not always useful in that way, but it can be, especially if you already have a bunch of energy cards because they've been on your bench for a while. It's a great card, and just the fact that you don't need that other one, which maybe you don't have it in your hand, that card definitely comes in handy. I like it a lot. So this heals all of your Pokemon but removes all of your energy cards. It's hard to come back once you have all of your energy cards gone, but obviously the HP thing's nice. It's either a C or D tier. I'm going to put it in C tier. It's not quite bad enough for D tier. Okay, so Poke-Flute is probably way better. I mean, I have to imagine it is if you have like 4 Gust of Winds, but since you can only have one of each trainer card with my rules, you have to Poke-Flute someone from their graveyard, bring it back, and then you'd want to lure it or Gust of Wind it or something along those lines to actually make that useful. It's probably a D. Its use really doesn't help that much. Pokemon Traders S tier. Trade one of your Pokemon for another Pokemon in your deck. Really good. Just because, say you have Nidorino and you really want Nidoking, and you have any other card possible that's Pokemon, you trade for it. Really good card. Poliwag's a high C tier just because it can immediately use Water Gun, which is a good move. It can do 30 damage. It doesn't have a lot of HP, but it doesn't really need it. I'm going to throw it high C tier. I'm just going to throw it there. And Poliwhirl is pretty close to a high B tier, because that first move that it has, Amnesia, you don't have to flip a coin. You just can immediately take one of their turns away for their next, or one of their moves away for the next turn. So if they only have one move, they just can't attack you. I guess they can retreat, which is something you're forcing them to do. It's nice. It's nice to have a move like that. It's a great stall move. And Double Slap isn't bad in itself. 3 energy makes it, it's not quite as good as what you'd get with a Marowak or a Marowak. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But, it's still good, being able to do 30 damage on average, 60 if you're lucky, maybe nothing. But Amnesia in itself is a great stall. It at least puts it into B tier. I love Poliwrath. Poliwrath's going into S tier. Poliwrath has the same move as Dragonair and Golduck, where you can take away energy cards in Whirlpool, but it does an absurd amount of damage at the same time. So they're probably not going to put another energy card back on them just because they have so much damage on them once you use that move and they're out of an energy. They're probably just going to say, well, that Pokemon's done. I got to do something about my bench. Ponyta is a standard C. It's pretty good. It can do a lot of damage with Flametail, doing 30. But unlike Dotrio or something, it doesn't have the free retreat. It does have 1 more HP, which is a pretty big deal. That can come in handy, but I don't like it quite as much for that reason. Porygon's going to go right into B tier. Yeah, it's not quite A tier. But that conversion 2 is great, because you can change your resistance. You can change their weakness too, with conversion 1. But that doesn't really come in handy quite as much as conversion 2 does. Change your resistance so everyone's doing 30 less damage to you. That's a big deal in the starting game. There's a lot of cards that can either barely hurt you or can't hurt you at all. It's a great stall. Potion's good. That's all I can say. It's nice to have whenever you get it. It's like the same thing as a Defender, but I'd say it's probably better than Defender, but I don't particularly love it. I love Primeape as a Pokemon. I'm going to throw that into B tier. It can do 3 coin flips for 20 each, so on average you think should do the same amount as a Marowak. And it's just the same amount of energies, it's only 2. But then it's also got Tantrum, which does 50. You have a chance to confuse yourself. And of course 70 HP. But I don't know, maybe you don't confuse yourself. And even if you do confuse yourself, maybe you can use it again. Or you can use a full heal, or retreat them with just the 1 retreat cost. It gives you a lot of options. It's a pretty cool move. My voice is running out here. This is a lot to talk about. Professor Oak is S tier. Get a new hand. It can help you out in a pinch. It almost always does. It's a great card. Psyduck, C tier. It can do 30 damage if you're lucky. Probably won't. Raichu, I'm going to probably put both Raichus into A tier. This one can do 60 damage. It hurts itself if you're unlucky, but 60 damage is a lot. And agility is pretty good, and the energy cost for agility is pretty favorable since it has 2 colorless energies. And then this one isn't favorable for its energy cost because it takes 4 lightning. so they all have to be lightning. If you're using split, it kind of sucks. But doing 10 damage to 3 of their bench Pokemon is really good, along with 30 and 90 HP. It's a good card. Rapidash is going right up there. Agility is really great for 30. It's got no retreat cost. It's got 70 HP. And yeah, just agility is so much better than like paralysis because you can take out the opponent's Pokemon and still have that invincibility on you. It's a really good card. Raticate, I do question if Raticate's good enough for B tier just because it's nice to be able to do 20 damage with 1 energy. Oh man, but I don't know, Super Fang's kind of useless, so it's really all you got. And same thing with Rattata. Rattata is close, honestly, to having a higher tier than Raticate just because it's got the free retreat. Free retreat can do 20 damage. Obviously 30 HP is not ideal, but you know, it does have the resistance to Psychic too, like most of the other normal types. Man, both of these cards could probably be in B tier, and I don't think I'd be too upset. But I wouldn't be too upset putting them in C tier either. Flip a coin. If heads, put a card from your discard pile on the top. That's pretty good. Sadly, you have to flip a coin. You only have one of them, so I'm going to go ahead and throw that right next to Pokeball because it's kind of the same level of good. You can flip a coin from your discard pile and throw it on the top of your deck, so it's going to be your card next turn. That's pretty good. Revive is going to go ahead and go into D. You can only use it on basic Pokemon. They only get half their HP. So you'd have to team it up with something that like heals them to make it good. I don't particularly like it. Rhydon is going to go into B tier. It's not quite good enough for A tier. You think it would be with the 50 damage it can possibly do, but I think that damages itself or something like that. The HP is really high. Horn attack isn't bad for 30 damage, but yeah, you're not really retreating this card, and that is a pretty big issue. Just the 3 retreat costs. Rhyhorn also kind of falls in the same pitfall. Like you think that'd be a B with Horn Attack doing 30 damage and 70 HP in a stall with Leer. It might be close to a B, but just that 3 energy retreat cost makes it so much harder to use. Sandshrew, C, it can stall, has 40 HP, pretty straightforward. And Sandslash is kind of pretty much the same thing as Primate, but Primate has Tantrum, so it's better. But Sandslash still, it's not bad in itself. Fury Swipes is about the same as their move, actually, is that it's the exact same move. They both have Fury Swipes. And Slash is a consistent 20 in case you don't want to flip coins. So, it's not bad. It's just barely B tier, though. Scoop Up is S tier. That can come in handy with a lot of cards. Any Kangaskhan, Snorlax, Chansey. Scoop Up's great. Scyther is one of the best cards in the game. It's got no retreat cost. You can lay it down immediately. It can do 30 damage, and if you're using it with grass, it can do 60 on its first turn. 70 HP. Really good. That's definitely, like, if there's reasons to limit this, that's definitely there. Seadra I'm going to go ahead and put into B tier. Water Gun's pretty darn good, because you can do quite a bit of damage with it. 70 HP or 60? Either way, 60 HP. Not quite as good, but agility is also pretty good. A lot of cards have agility. This one only does 20, sadly, instead of 30 damage like Rapidash does, but it's still pretty good. It's a good B tier. And Seeking. Do I put Seeking in B tier? Just barely. Seeking's definitely a just barely B tier card. I mean, it's really nice to be able to do 30 damage with just 2 energies, so that's the reason why it's there. And, you know, it can do 10 with 1, which is good, because you might need more HP. If it had no retreat cost, it would be arguably close to A tier. I still don't know if I'd put it in A tier, but it'd be close. Seal is a high C tier. 60 HP is always nice. It can do 10 right away. It comes in handy. It's a good card. Shelder. I'm going to put Shelder, I think, in D tier. What's its move? Supersonic. Ooh, so it can confuse, but it has to flip a coin. You know what? I'm going to put Shelter into C tier. I think it's better than Cloyster. I mean, just the fact that you have to evolve into Cloyster. If Cloyster you could lay it down as a basic Pokemon, it would be in C tier. But you can't. So it isn't. Slowbro is going to go into B tier. You can take damage counters and throw it on him, but he's only got 60 HP. So you can't do it for very long, but then I think it also can paralyze with just 2 energy cards. That's pretty good. Yeah, so it's a good card. Pretty fun to use. Slowpoke is not a good card. Slowpoke's going into D tier. It can't really do any damage. Not very good. Snorlax is another S tier. It's another stall card if you want to use it, but its attack is really good and it can't be paralyzed. So it's not, I mean, you could use it as a stall card, but honestly it's kind of a stall card that you attack with at the same time. Just because you can paralyze them and they can't paralyze you. That's a big deal. A lot of these cards cause paralysis. Or have the chance to. Spearow's got no retreat costs, so that one's going. Mirror Move's almost useless, but 10 damage, no retreat cost, it's going into C tier. Squirtle is going into C tier, can paralysis. Withdraw is almost useless because you can paralyze while doing damage, but definitely C tier. Starmie. Starmie's just barely a B tier. It's going up there with Seeking. It can heal itself to recover. Pretty neat. 60 HP is not a lot though, and it eats up your turn. But then it can also cause paralysis and do 20 damage. It costs 3 energy to do that, which is a bit much, but it's pretty good. Staryu is going right next to Starmie. Staryu's good. You can do 20 damage right away. It's like Machop. Has less HP, but isn't fighting type. You can do quite a bit of damage really fast. Super Energy Removal is S tier. Even if you can only put one of those in your deck, you're screwing someone over. Their base plan is like, okay, I got 2 energy cards or 3 on Nidoking. You take 2 of those away, they can't use Nidoking anymore. It screws anyone over, even if there's only one of them in your deck. So you use it at the right time, you're at least screwing over one of their Pokemon. Super Potion, I'm just going to throw that up with Potion. It's a little bit better, but I don't know. I guess I'll throw it in B tier. It's good. You have to eat up one of your energies, but then you do 40 damage, or you remove 40 damage. It comes in handy. Switch is very good. I don't think it's quite S tier, but it's definitely A tier. Then you don't have to worry about retreat cost, and you don't have to worry about being paralyzed or poisoned, or I mean not poisoned, but asleep. Both of those kind of sucks. You can't retreat with those. So this works as a full heal, and you don't have to worry about retreat costs. It's a good card. Tangela is not bad. The HP is obviously a problem with only 50 HP, but doing 20 damage with the chance to paralyze is pretty good. And the poison powder with automatically poisoning with 3 energy, very good. Anything that automatically poisons is just really good. So yeah, I'm going to stick it into B tier, just because a lot of these low tier B cards I think are pretty tied with Tangela. Tangela's not bad. Tauros is great. Tauros is going in A tier. You have a chance to confuse yourself with its bottom move, but it does 20 plus each damage counter on him. He's got 60 HP. You do a lot of damage. A lot of damage for 3 energy card costs. And you might not even confuse yourself. Even if you do, you did so much, it doesn't matter. Tentacool is going into B tier. It doesn't have a lot of HP, but it's got no retreat cost. Can do 10 damage right away, and most importantly, it's Pokemon power. It's a free scoop up. It's only 20 damage, but if you start out with a hand, there's almost no reason to not put Tentacool down, because chances are they're not doing 30 damage on their first turn. So you put Tentacool out there, they win the coin flip. At least if you play the Game Boy game, or I think it's how the base rules were on release. They can attack you right away on their first turn, at least with the base rules, or playing it in the Game Boy game. It doesn't matter. They can attack you on their first turn, you can scoop this thing up, you lost nothing. So, it's a good card. Tentacool is I don't think it's quite A tier, so I think I might put it in B tier at the same amount. I didn't realize how good this card was until recently. It's got no retreat cost, great. It can confuse with 1 energy, great. You have to flip a coin. But then you don't have to flip a coin to poison, and it's water type, so you don't really have the option to poison many people, and you do 10 damage for just 2 energy. This card's fully pumped up for 2 energy cards, and is really good. This card, you know what, Tentacruel's going into A tier. I really like Tentacruel. It's a really good card. Vaporeon's going into A tier. Water Gun's really good. It's got a lot of HP for a stage 2. Only 1 retreat cost. It's a good card. Venomoth is a disappointing card. Its Pokemon power is practically useless. So you can change... Yeah, its Pokemon power is practically useless. It does screw over anyone if you get heads on them, but you need to get heads. So I think they're confused and poisoned if you get heads. And if there's another type out there, you can change your type to their type, so you can make it super effective and do 20 instead of 10. But the way that you choose the types is stupid, because it has to be out in the field. Yeah, its Pokemon power is practically useless, and that's the disappointing part. But its move, if you do get heads on it, is really good. It's got no retreat cost, has a fair amount of HP. It's a good card. It's probably a higher B just because of the no retreat cost, and its move can screw someone over. But I don't know, maybe it's like a medium B. Venonat's a standard C. You know, it can heal itself. It can hold them off. Standard C. Venusaur is an S. You can transfer all your grass type to another grass type. So you have Venusaur out there. He has like 10 grass energies on him because you know you can transfer it to someone else. You just get a Nidoking. You move 3 of those onto Nidoking. He's fully pumped up. Really good. I like it a lot. Victory Bell is one of the most disappointing cards. Luckily, Erica's Victory Bell I just found out because I didn't really collect those when I was a kid, so I didn't have it. Insanely good. So that does make me happy that there is at least a good Victory Bell card out there, but it's not the first one. This card, just because it's a stage 3, I kind of want to put it into F. It has to flip a coin, and then they can't retreat. That's bad. They can't retreat if they're paralyzed. So, yeah, it's such a bad card. Man, I don't know. I'm going to put it into F tier. It's disappointing how bad that card is. It really is, because Victory Bell is another one of those Pokemon like Parasect that I want to like use the Pokemon card, because I never use Victory Bell. So I want it to be good, and luckily Erica's Victory Bell, I forgot what it does, but I remember it being really good. Like, wow, I want that card. I'm never going to buy it because all these cards are absurdly expensive nowadays. Maybe I'll buy a damaged one. But the damaged ones, actually, if you want to buy old cards just to like look at them, you don't care about value, probably not you, but hey, you can buy a damaged one for a fair price. I mean, it's kind of just garbage to most people, so I guess it is, depending if you think it's fair, but it'll probably be like $3 or something. You know, it's not anything absurd. Vileplume, I really like. It's either A tier or S tier. I'm going to go ahead and throw it into S tier. Just because you have the chance to heal for 10 damage on each turn. It is just a chance. So, I don't know if it's quite as good as Alakazam, so it's probably like a bottom S tier. But, you know, its attack can do an absurd amount of damage too. It confuses itself, but really, it's like, when you just do that much damage, you just don't care. So it might be an A tier card, but I'm going to throw an S tier because it's my list. Voltorb is a D. It just has 10 damage. Nothing special. Can't paralyze. Vulpix is a C. It can do 10, it takes 2 things, but it can confuse. Confuse is kind of a rare condition. There's not a lot of cards that can do it, honestly, out of these base cards. And it's really good. They have to flip a coin every time they attack or try to retreat, and they do 20 to themselves if they get tails. So, really, really good condition to throw on someone. Turtle, I'm going to throw right next to Charmeleon. Really good card, can do 40 damage, has quite a bit of HP. I'm going to go ahead and throw Weedle into B, just because it can poison right away. Poison's a great condition. You have a chance to poison, but I mean, if they have a great card out there and you're okay with like losing a Weedle, I mean, even just a Raichu or maybe this Raichu that's 90 HP, you get lucky and poison them, it changes the entire tide of the battle. So it's a good basic Pokemon to throw out there with just 1 energy. Weeping Bell I'm going to go ahead and throw into B. It only costs 2 energy cards to do 30 damage and has a chance to poison with just 1 and 70 HP. It is the best out of the Weeping Bell, Victory Bell, and Bellsprout combo, and it's actually a pretty good card. Sadly, you don't want to evolve it because Victory Bell is disappointing, but what are you going to do? Weezing's kind of a disappointing card. I'm going to stick Weezing into C. It has the chance to poison, which is pretty good, but for a stage 2, you kind of want it to auto-poison or something for 2 energy card costs in a stage 2. Self-destruct, again, a move you don't want to use, but it can come in handy. What's nice about this self-destruct is that it's only 3 energies instead of 4. You're really losing a lot if you self-destruct with 4 energies. You're not losing as much with 3. So, I don't know, it's a high C. It's close. Wigglytuff is an S. Wigglytuff does 10 for each card you have in your bench, and it can even stall with Lullaby if you need it to. This card just does an absurd amount of damage very quickly. It has a high amount of HP. Very, very, very good card. Both Zapdos I'm going to go ahead and just put into A tier next to Moltres. This Zapdos I like more than the other one. Just Thunder, even if you hurt yourself, possibly. 60 damage is a lot, and it can do one final big bang that does 100 damage. One problem with doing that final big bang is that they can decide not to attack you and stall, and then you can't retreat. So, it does have that downfall if you ever want to use Thunderbolt, but 100 damage is going to take out almost everyone. So it's really good. And out of all the 3 of these mystical birds, I think Articuno is probably the best for the pros at the time, but my favorite is probably the Zapdos. It's the closest to getting into S tier for me. And then there's the other Zapdos, which I'm gonna again put into A tier. It can do 40 it does 40 damage. It costs a lot of energy to get to use it, but it's still pretty cool. And it can do 20 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Okay, so it can do 10 damage to itself if you fail a coin flip. But still, 10 damage to yourself is not too bad. And doing 20 to each one of their bench is pretty good. And finally, you have Zubat. I'm going to put him into B tier. He's got no retreat cost, he can heal himself 10 each turn, and he can confuse. I like that, that's a good move. And that finishes up this list, which is great because my voice is almost out. This is a lot of cards to talk about. We'll see if I have a voice tomorrow. Hopefully I do. And I hope you guys all like the way that I rank this. If not, you can tell me which ones in particular you didn't like. And have a good night.